What's it like having Cox Business Cloud solutions with rapid response support? It's like taking your IT department and doubling it. Because with our experts backing yours, managing time-consuming tasks is now actually manageable. When Deborah clicks on a link she shouldn't have, Kate's there to help. When Javi needs to access his desktop in the cloud, Carla makes it happen securely. And when Rich needs to focus on the big picture, there's a team he can count on for the rest. Cox Business Cloud Solutions. The experts your experts can trust.
It's been 20 years since I last saw my brother. I'm sure he thinks about me a lot. I think about him a lot.
Cuando hablamos por video, cuando hablamos por llamada, se desarrolla aquel sentimiento, aquel lazo hermoso, pero la distancia es cruel.
When I left, it was really sad for me because I didn't know when I was going to go back down there.
He hecho muchísimo de menos a mi hermano.
My brother was like a father to me, so not being able to see him is very difficult. In the Latin American culture, physical touch is very important. ¿Sabes cómo se siente eso? Se siente como la primera vez que nos abrazamos después de no habernos visto. To be able to feel his hug again today, yeah, it took me back to 20 years ago.
Good afternoon. I'm Bob McKenna, President and CEO of the Virginia Peninsula Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to welcome you to the latest event in the Chamber's 757 Vision Eyes on the Future series, an offshore wind power update. This highly informative and interesting series has focused on efforts that we should all support and which provide some optimism and excitement for a bright future. The Hampton Roads region and the peninsula specifically are homes to many assets and a great place to live, work, and play. In keeping with the Virginia Peninsula Chamber's mission to connect business with opportunity, we have been hosting this monthly series of moderated panels in which we take a look at some of our strengths and weaknesses in an effort to inspire, inform, and drive action. So the purpose of the series is twofold. One, to raise the level of awareness of our great assets, and two, to discuss how we can best take advantage of those assets to reignite the energy, optimism, and sense of collaboration that were present before we ever heard of COVID-19. We began this series in September of 2020 with a look at the offshore wind power in Hampton Roads. John Larson from Dominion was a part of that panel. There have obviously been some significant developments in the last 18 months. So our goal today with our expert panel is to explore it a little further and to take a look at what has happened in that period and where we expect to go from here. This industry represents great potential as a regional economic driver from many perspectives, but also presents some challenges. Please listen, learn, and participate. There will be time at the end of the panel discussion for questions from the audience. You can use the Q&A box for questions. We would love to hear your thoughts as we move forward. Before we get started, I would like to thank today's presenting sponsor, also our series sponsor, Cox Virginia. Cox is a highly valued partner of the Chamber, and their sponsorship for these events make it possible to offer them at no cost. Representing Cox today is Sarah Buck. Sarah is the Senior Manager of Public Affairs for Cox Virginia. Her focus is working towards building a better future through business development opportunities, digital equity programs, and corporate social responsibility. Sarah currently serves on the Virginia Chamber Board of Directors, Virginia Peninsula Chamber's Board of Directors, and was just this week elevated to our executive committee. Sarah has a bachelor's degree in communication studies from Virginia Tech. Go Hokies. In 2016, Sarah was recognized as one of Hampton Roads' top 40 under 40 by Inside Business and is a Girl Scout Council of Colonial Coast Future Famous Former. Ladies and gentlemen, Sarah Buck. Are you there, Sarah? Here she is. All right, over to you, Sarah.
Oh, all right, great. Hi, Bob. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Bob, thank you as always. Every time you say go Hokies, I can't help but smile, and even though I'm expecting it every time, but thank you for that lovely introduction. Thank you all for joining today's discussion. As a technology company that's focused on building a better future for the next generation, Cox isn't only constantly investing in our network to meet the needs of our current customers, but we're also anticipating what the needs will be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and making those investments now so we're ready for when that time comes. The Cox family has earmarked billions of dollars for broadband infrastructure enhancements and expansion, and they're also doing some really cool things when it comes to sustainability. They've made a conscious effort to invest in companies that hang their hat on being environmentally responsible, companies like Bright Farms, Golden Isles Conservation Center, and Rivian, which is an electric truck company. Those efforts, combined with steps we're taking as a company to drive positive environmental change, like taking a holistic approach to waste management in our operations to reach zero waste to landfill. We have a goal to do that by 2024. And making thoughtful changes like swapping out light bulbs, adding low flow water aerators, and installing rainwater harvest systems where we can. We do all of this to help meet our goal of being carbon and water neutral by 2034. These are just a couple examples of how we're doing our part to help the environment, and those to the company are just as important as delivering on what we're known for here in the region, which is connectivity. With that, I thank you for taking the time today to hear updates on the offshore wind project and how this venture is supporting a clean environment through advancements in renewable energy initiatives. Back to you, Bob.
Okay, for those of you who are veterans of this series, we typically have a very talented moderator. Today we had to go to the bench and pick Bob McKenna to be the moderator. So I get to talk way too much today. So the way we're going to do this, I'm going to quickly introduce our three panelists, and then I'm going to hand it over to each panelist in turn to give a short update on their bio, and then John Larson is going to kick it off with some slides. But so let me just go down the panel real quick. John Larson has been with Dominion Energy for 21 years. He's a director for public policy and economic development at Dominion Energy, and he's a graduate of NC State University. Go Wolfpack, except when they're playing the Hokies or the Irish. Virginia Haggerott is a senior legislative assistant with Congresswoman Elaine Loria. Prior to that, she worked on the staff of Senator Heidi Heitkamp from North Dakota. And just as a note, she's so dedicated that when she moved over to work for a U.S. congressman from the state of Virginia, she changed her first name to Virginia. She is also a Navy brat, go Navy, and a graduate of University of Maryland, go Terrapins, except when they're playing all those schools already mentioned. Porter Brandon, Dr. Porter Brandon is the president of Thomas Nelson Community College, which will soon be called VPCC, thus stealing the name of the Virginia Peninsula Chamber. Prior to coming to the Peninsula, she was vice president for student services at Mitchell Community College in Statesville, North Carolina, and she has a doctorate of education from Fordham University. Go Rams. Okay, so now I'm going to go in turn over to the three panelists, let them quickly introduce themselves, and then we'll get started. John, over to you.
All right, thank you, Bob. Pleasure to be here today, and look forward to sharing an update on the Coastal Virginia Offshore Wind Project. I'll say this is quite a unique opportunity for me in my career to be able to work on this large commercial project as part of the efforts that began over a decade ago when I was in our Alternative Energy Solutions team. So really excited to be here, and I look forward to sharing my slides with you and hearing from my fellow panelists.
Thank you, John. Over to you, Virginia.
Hi, I'm Virginia from Congresswoman Loria's office. Thank you so much, Bob, for the introduction. As Bob said, I am the Congresswoman's Senior Legislative Assistant. I handle her energy and environment portfolio, and a lot of that has to do with offshore wind. So I'm really excited to be here today. I do just want to say I'm here in my own capacity. My thoughts and experiences are my own, but the Congresswoman is doing some great work on offshore wind. So we're excited to talk about that.
Thanks, Virginia. Over to you, Porter.
Good morning, and thanks for having me. Similar to John and Virginia, I'm really excited to be part of this conversation, especially hearing more about the ways higher education and community colleges in general, and those of us who are preparing, the workforce pipelines can partner on what is clearly the largest, offshore wind project under development in the United States. So it's a really exciting time, and I'm really happy to hear more about what John's got going on and how the community colleges and higher education in general can help support those efforts.
All right, thank you to all our distinguished panelists. Now we're going to start. With John Larson. And John, can you share your slides?
I sure can, Bob. If I can get a thumbs up that everyone can see those slides. Good?
Yes, we got them.
All right, excellent. So this is a picture of the two turbines actually operating 27 miles off the coast of Virginia. The initial two turbines and first two installed in federal waters that have been operating for a little, I guess about a year and a half now. We've been very pleased with the output of those turbines, but most importantly, the lessons we learned during the installation of these two turbines, working with BOEM for a federal approval, and the actual installation and operations has really informed us as we move forward with the larger commercial project that's underway right now. So to give you a quick update, I've got to tell you, hats off to my colleagues at Dominion Energy and the team that is moving forward with the permitting and the planning for the installation of the larger project. We're on track to be fully online at the end of 2026, and we just recently announced the contract negotiations have been completed with all of our major equipment suppliers, as well as a approval request to the Virginia State Corporation Commission and a charter for the Charybdis wind turbine installation vessel that's being built by Dominion Energy, Virginia's parent company. And you say, why are those things important? Well, if you come down here and you look at the middle of the slide for regulatory, as we move forward with the Virginia rider process, and that's an approval from the State Corporation Commission for any impacts that we'll have on our customers. In other words, the cost recovery of the project from the tips of the blade all the way to the interconnection at the Fentress substation in Chesapeake, as well as the approval of that route to bring that power from the shoreline over to the Fentress substation. So pretty important to have all of that information nailed down for that process commercially, and similarly to facilitate the BOEM process so that we can understand how many vessels are needed, what type of impacts there may be as we move forward on installation of the project, so those can all be analyzed and reviewed as part of the NEPA review process. You can see that the schedule shows all of these being completed by near the end of 2023, at which time we would start the onshore construction, and then in 2024, after the North Atlantic right whale season, move forward with the construction offshore. So we're moving along just fine. I mentioned these major equipment suppliers, and some of you may have seen the press release or heard about it, but obviously Siemens Gamesa Renewable Energy for the turbines, and that really includes the towers here. And let me get the laser pointer out. The towers here, the nacelle and the blades, and then for the monopiles, which you cannot really see here, foundations going into the seabed, EEW. The transition pieces, this yellow section that you see, which really is a piece of equipment that connects that foundation or monopile into the seafloor to the wind turbine, the Blatt Industries. The Blatt and Semco working in a partnership for the foundation by Blatt for the offshore substation, and then the substation equipment themselves, Semco. Keep in mind, those will be 150 feet up and can support a helicopter land on top. And then to really wrap it up and coordinate all of that offshore activity, DME and Prismium. So they'll take care of installing that foundation and transition piece, laying the cables, and bringing those cables ashore as we look forward to the project. What are we doing right now? So the company took an approach here in an effort to maximize identifying the scopes of work that can be done as local content in Virginia. So what we formed is the Virginia supply chain team. We have someone from the project team offshore, somebody from the project team onshore, someone from the operations aspect of offshore wind. We have supply chain, as well as somebody from the external affairs community engagement. And so these 5 individuals are tasked with working with those major equipment suppliers to identify what can be done here in Virginia. So what are those Virginia scopes of work? And then how will those major equipment suppliers work to connect with businesses in Virginia? And then, of course, we support with a number of organizations, economic development and trade organizations and chambers in the area to share this information just as we're doing today. And later this year, we'll hold construction exposition with those major equipment providers for subcontractors. A parallel path will identify the jobs and roles. So once all that information is known, then we can identify the specific roles and jobs and when they'll be hired. And then working with organizations, the community colleges, workforce councils, unions, and then also engage in community organizations to get that interest and engagement from individuals to step into a clean energy career. We expect to have most of this pre-work all done by the end of first quarter this year. So really second, third, and fourth quarter this year will be extremely busy as we get this information out there and these companies begin to do their local contracting. Keep in mind, it's a broad range of services and information that's needed as we go forward. Engineering, consultants, professionals, hospitality, catering, and transportation. And I like to phrase it up, anywhere between somebody that's got a CDL all the way to somebody with a PhD in naval architecture. Anywhere in between those two, there'll be opportunities for men and women to join the clean energy workforce. Keep in mind, many of these roles will be onshore, as you can see from the photographs here in the collage, with smaller firms really being offshore work as we go forward. So a lot of support industries will be called on as we move forward with the project. We're off to a great start on this economic development. Last year, you may have seen the announcement with Rose Home Manufacturing. albeit it's 10 jobs. It's the first manufacturer actually in the United States for offshore wind, and they make the threaded bolts and connections that put together tower pieces and bolt the blades onto the nacelle and the rotor hub. It's a Danish company, and they've seen fit to expand the manufacturing facility they have here. Now it's Charybdis, and that's Dominion Energy's parent company, Dominion Energy Inc., leading the way with building the only Jones Act compliant vessel to be able to support offshore wind construction. And then, of course, the Portsmouth Marine Terminal, which will be pre-assembly and staging for foundation, transition pieces, and those turbines. And then Siemens Gamesa announcing a $200 million investment and 310 jobs on PMT as well, which is back up here as you get ready to go through the tunnel entrance. You can see the area that's laid out for blade finishing. They'll bring green blades over, and since they're made out of fiberglass, think about it as putting a gel coat like you may see on a boat or other fiberglass. And then, of course, working with the unions as we move forward. One thing to keep in mind too, Dominion Energy is going to have its own operations base. I mentioned the roads, and we'll have about 190 pieces of rendition of it with the tower pieces erected and ready to go out to install on the transition piece, and you can see blades being actually put on this. Also, you'll have a service operations vessel that can accommodate about 60 to 70 people on board. It's a new concept that we're looking at deploying. It's called walk to work. So instead of the vessel pulling up and docking on the ladder over here, it actually lowers an arm and individuals walk right to the top of the transition piece and in through the doorway here. And then the last two will have two of these crew transfer vessels, and they're the Uber to move equipment back and forth. Little bit about timing, and I know many of you will be interested in this. We see the hiring really beginning to ramp up in 2023 with the construction and installation going through 24 through 26, and then down to about 1,100 people a year involved locally to support offshore wind, about 130 of those being Dominion employees and the balance coming from our ecosystem here. And that's really the end of the presentation, Bob. So I'll stop sharing and we can move to colleagues.
Okay, John, thank you very much. And I'm looking down my list of questions for you, and you've answered all of them already. So we're gonna move ahead. But I'm sure I'll come back to you for a couple. So over to Dr. Brannon. So one of the things that John mentioned was partnering with community organizations, and specifically talking about workforce development. Can you tell us about what the Community College Workforce Cooperation is doing in partnership with your organization and Dominion?
Sure, absolutely. And it's John's presentation was the perfect setup for this. There are 3 community colleges in our region, Tidewater, Thomas Nelson, and Paul DeCamp, who have formed a community college workforce cooperative. And the goal is really to leverage the resources of those 3 individual community colleges to really create a strong workforce, and especially a partnership that's going to help create this offshore wind, a regional workforce for the offshore wind industry. And one of the things that we're doing is identifying what we each do really well, where there's overlap, and where we have some differences to really begin to prepare the community for the jobs that are going to become available because of this emerging offshore wind industry in our region. So there was almost like the life cycle of the project that John had mentioned, many phases, right? So you look at the construction and installation phase, you have a maintenance phase, and throughout those phases of the operation, there's a number of opportunities where community college workforce training can play a significant role. And so John mentioned just a few things like engineering, which you can have a degree degree in engineering, but also building trades and construction, electricians, carpentry, welding. So Thomas Nelson alone, for example, will never be able to produce the amount of welders that we're going to need just for offshore wind and the other industries. But this collaboration of the three community colleges allows us to be able to generate the kind of workforce, labor and talent that's going to be needed to support. And so if Thomas Nelson can produce 50 welders per year, the three of us together may be able to produce 150 welders and truck drivers and plumbers and painters and machinists. So the cooperative is a very unique opportunity, and the only one that exists in our system that allows three community colleges to really leverage its resources to be able to flood the talent pipelines that's going to be required, especially as you approach 2023 and 2026. And we're able to train a workforce as one individual unit versus three independent colleges trying to best satisfy the industry's demand. So it's really exciting. We also partner closely with the Hampton Roads Workforce Council to be able to attract. One of the things John mentioned was being able to attract our community into these fields and being able to help them understand what some of those pathways are. And so working with organizations like Dominion, I saw Crystal Bright on the line, and our partners at the Hampton Roads Workforce Council. It's a true partnership, not just with the community colleges, but also with our other local agencies who have a very similar mission to drive the talent, especially around offshore wind. And so it's really exciting to see how easily we've all come together to help understand what the needs are, identify those talent pools, some starting in high school, some focused on our veteran population, our retired veteran population. There is a large swath of community members who we believe would be very interested and prepared for a change of career or new careers in the offshore wind industry. And so the partnership between the Workforce Cooperative, the three community colleges, Dominion, is going to be essential, we believe, to not only attract, but also prepare and train our residents for the jobs that John identified, which is skills trade. And then eventually, right, someone we're going to need to get them off to four-year institutions to get training in engineering and geospatial planning and things of that nature. That's work that the community colleges won't be able to do, but we can prepare students for that work and partner to create those pathways, both academic and professional pathways. And so, Bob, I think the partnership, and we started these conversations a while ago, and the partnerships continue to grow as we identify what the roles are that needed to be filled. But I do believe that this partnership is going to be essential for us being able to satisfy the demands, the job demands that are going to be created out of this industry.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Brandon. So a follow-on question to that, and I'm not even sure how to word it, but so you have three community colleges locally here in Hampton Roads.
Correct.
Will there be overlap in the courses that you are offering, or is Thomas Nelson going to focus on specific specialties and TCC and Paul DeCamp? How's that going to work out?
Yes, and so yes to both. So there has to be overlap just because of the sheer number of skills trades individuals that we're going to need. So there'll definitely be, so like the three of us will produce as many welders as we possibly can. Two of us can do plumbing training. Two of us can do machinists and CNC machining. So where we have the facilities already set up to train, there will be specializations at those community colleges. But where we all have the same facilities and are able to provide the same training, we're definitely going to all be replicating work. And that's a good thing because neither of us could produce the talent individually.
Right. Okay. So you mentioned welders, and early on in these conversations, so early on for me, I'm going back 3 to 4 years. One of the things that we thought positioned Hampton Roads well for this industry, to be the hub of this industry, for instance, on the East Coast, was the fact that we have a lot of welders here, right? We have shipbuilding and ship repair. We are preeminent in those industries, not just in the US, but in the world. But the demands for welders, just specifically take welding, are so great just at the shipyards,
right?
That we really have to ramp up, right? And then throw in the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel project that's going on. So we need so many welders that you guys are going to have to expand, and which is why you changed your name, I know, because. But so how are you up to that challenge? Not you specifically, but is the VCCS up to that challenge?
Yes, we've been incredibly lucky in preparing for that work. So one of the examples of how we're expanding, for example, at Thomas Nelson specifically, the majority of our welding training occurs here in Hampton. And earlier last year, we received a $1.6 million grant to expand welding training into Williamsburg, where we didn't have a facility. Being able to offer classes through multiple times of the day. One of the challenges is actually welding instructors. And so being able to put welders out into the workforce is one thing, but we also need them back to train the new generation. So it's not even just preparing welders, but preparing welding educators and instructors to actually come back and be able to teach. And so as we ramp up, the facilities are one thing, but having the educators to actually do the training is also what we're preparing for. And each of us are having similar challenges. The facilities are one thing, but having enough instructors to be able to do welding instruction day round and on weekends, that's another challenge, is being able to attract those welders that we prepared to come back and prepare the next group.
Okay, and are you recruiting outside of the area?
We try not to. Honestly, it's really important for us to recruit, and we believe that if we've trained you, right, you're the absolute best to come and train others. And so as much as possible, we do try to recruit those who have graduated from our programs. But based on the need, supply and demand, we may be forced to do that. But it's a last option, not the first.
Okay, so you're talking instructors. How about students? Do we have enough population here that are interested in going into the trades that we can just focus on graduates from our high schools locally?
Definitely. I mean, we are in a dense area, like the population that we have here between Norfolk and, Richmond. This is a very, very dense area. And so if we don't have it here, it's going to be very hard to find elsewhere. But I definitely believe between our high school population, our retired veterans, our active duty servicemen, and just folks who are interested, those who've been displaced by the pandemic, which is a large number, I definitely believe that we have the population here to recruit from.
Amen, sister. Let me help. So let me know what the chamber can do to help with that, because we've been saying for a while now that that obviously not every young person needs to go off to a four-year university. We have great jobs in this area in the trades, and the trades are a very honorable career and a very essential career, as we found out for the last 2 years. So we need to help you out. We need to be one of your partners and stakeholders. So and you know that I'm here for you. Okay, so we're gonna move over into the legislative area for a minute, and John and Porter will probably come back to you soon. But Virginia, Congresswoman Loria started the bipartisan Offshore Wind Caucus. Can you discuss with us the purpose of that caucus?
Yeah. So the Congresswoman did start this Offshore Wind Caucus, the first ever in Congress, and she started it in 2021. So it's only a year old, still very new, but she has gathered members from the West Coast, the East Coast, Republican, Democrat, to discuss different policies that will promote offshore wind technology innovation, to promote how to develop a skilled workforce, and to also figure out how we can break down barriers to development and what's really causing some of those backlogs that the offshore wind industry has faced over the last, I would say 10 years, probably more. As we see, in Europe, it's moving a lot faster. It's been developed for a long time, whereas here we had a lot of barriers. So that's some of the key things that the caucus discusses, and we bring in different guests to discuss these issues. So we now have over, I think about 20 members. So it's new, but it's definitely exciting, and they're doing a lot.
Okay, great. So we know that everybody on this call probably is aware that back in the fall, a fairly large infrastructure was passed through the House and the Senate and signed by the president. Can you talk about what is being done to ensure adequate infrastructure for Virginia to become an offshore wind hub?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's a top priority for a lot of the members in the Virginia delegation, but the Congresswoman as well. There was significant funding for port infrastructure in the infrastructure bill. And so my boss, the Congresswoman, and many others in the Virginia delegation worked really hard advocating with the administration, advocating with congressional leadership to get funding for specifically the Portsmouth Marine Terminal and for upgrades there so that they can, I mean, offshore wind is something we haven't done before really, and our ports may need some upgrades and some changes. And so we actually secured 20 million for the Portsmouth Marine Terminal to make those essential upgrades so that they can be ready to, I guess, transport these huge turbines and start construction. So that was a huge win, and we're really excited about that. And I do think there is a lot more funding opportunities from the infrastructure bill that offshore wind can take advantage of. There's more funding that will happen in the next couple years, but that was a huge win for our district and for Virginia. So we're really excited for that.
Okay, great. So we had Congresswoman Loria here in October, I think, at the Peninsula Chamber, talking to our Military Affairs Council. One of the things that she spoke about, and for the benefit of the audience, Congresswoman Loria is a retired Navy officer, nuclear trained. So she's a big fan of nuclear power. So wind energy and solar energy kind of add to our portfolio. But Virginia, and I know that this is a softball for you because you're familiar with all of this, but can you talk about what else is needed in our energy portfolio, say here in Hampton Roads, to be able to power business here, to ensure economic growth and to ensure the future strength of our military? And as you know, we have all 5 services represented here in the Hampton Roads area. So can you just talk about that, the energy portfolio?
Sure. So the Congresswoman and I agree that nuclear is a very important part of Virginia's and the nation's clean energy portfolio. I want to say between 30 to 40% of Virginia's clean energy or energy comes from nuclear. And so making sure that it's safe and efficient and reliable, that is key. Obviously, we have a lot of nuclear engineers because we have aircraft carriers that are built off of nuclear. So I feel that Hampton Roads, the public, the general public understands how crucial nuclear energy is to our national security, also to our just own, economic progress. So nuclear is something that she and I would agree that is key to meeting our clean energy goals, and then also promoting skilled jobs. Some people maybe who worked at veterans who worked on nuclear aircraft carriers, they can easily move into the nuclear civil industry. So that's a really big portion of, I think, what we need to have a wide variety of different energy sources so that we're more resilient and that we have a wide variety of workforce. But of course, offshore wind is something that's at the forefront of the Congresswoman's mind. I think even Congress's mind. The Department of Energy just recently committed to 30 gigawatts of offshore wind energy by 2030. And so that is going to mean that Virginia is going to be a huge part of that and generating that gigawatt goal. So that's really at the forefront of our minds too. Solar, I have not done as much work on solar energy, and I'm not as familiar with where certain solar farms are in Hampton Roads, but that's certainly something we want to promote too.
Okay, thanks, Virginia. John, over to you. I know Dominion contributes very much to the energy portfolio for the Commonwealth and for Hampton Roads, because we're talking about the Hampton Roads region right now. Can you comment on that? So nuclear, natural gas, whatever Dominion is doing to contribute to that energy portfolio.
Yeah, I'll be glad to. So if you think about most of our lives growing up, we've enjoyed a diverse generation portfolio. Certainly the foundation, nuclear, coal, natural gas, and really hydro are the predominant. And as we make this transition to clean energy, we need to have that same type of diverse portfolio. It really does two things for you. It really helps you select the most efficient resource to use at whatever time you need the energy. And the second one is having that diverse portfolio gives you great reliability from a generation perspective. So as we move forward, you'll see nuclear, you're going to see offshore wind, you'll see some onshore wind, you'll see solar, and you'll see storage. And initially, we'll still have natural gas assets to help fill that need, because sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow. So we need to be able to meet that on-demand power request. And eventually, you'll see new technologies come into play, green hydrogen, those types of things. As far as thinking about the Hampton Roads area and nuclear, just look at the efforts that Dominion Energy has underway today at Surrey and North Anna for subsequent license renewal, and the amount of investment that's going to be needed. So as you really think about opportunities for businesses to support those modernization efforts, as well as I start thinking about our schools again, right? You know, so we're talking about a need for offshore wind, but what about the need for men and women to be able to go in and execute the upgrades to those nuclear facilities as we go forward, whether they're coming out of the military or whether we need to get them trained up. It's just a great opportunity. And I look at programs the Commonwealth has, G3 and Fast Forward, to be able to provide, in essence, free or greatly subsidized opportunity for men and women to learn trades that can be used in any industry, but specifically are very well suited for the infrastructure needs that we're talking about here.
Okay, that's great. That's a great answer. Thank you, John. Can you also just discuss why Hampton Roads in particular is uniquely positioned to be an offshore wind hub? Are you still talking?
Yeah, you know.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you know, I'll tell you, it's a fantastic area when you think about it. Already, we've got just I very highly regard maritime industry, right? You know, building vessels in the area, tremendous skilled workforce that has demonstrated it can get the job done. But then there's some natural benefits that really come into play here. If you think about wide, deep channels that vessels can transit quickly, available marine terminal space, and being able to take and quickly move to transition that from the traditional bulk carrier to, hey, upgrade it for offshore wind to be able to make the heavy lifts that are needed. So we've got available space, we've got great opportunities for ingress and egress. We've got a great workforce. And one of the most important things many people just disregard, and I saw a great presentation by one of the companies that does a lot of logistics around offshore wind. And the gentleman had a picture of a bridge up there. And he said, this is why Hampton Roads is the premier port for offshore wind on the East Coast. Because of the Navy, there were never bridges built that really obstruct ingress and egress out of the port. Keep in mind, when those towers go out for the offshore wind turbines, the sections are put together and they're stood up erect, not laying down. So you're talking towers that are 600 to 700 feet tall. There are not very many bridges that and ports you could operate out of, except Hampton Roads on the East Coast, to be able to move freely in and out without restrictions. So just a lot of fantastic pieces there. Great supportive policy also in the Commonwealth.
So John, that was a leading question. I wanted you to say that. So the Port of Virginia is better than any port on the East Coast as far as accessibility for this, and I think that's why the Portsmouth Marine Terminal was also ideal for the infrastructure improvements that Virginia was talking about to support offshore wind power. So okay, so we have a question from the audience I'm going to go to right now from Richard Severinghouse. He says, I would assume Dominion Energy and the other involved companies are providing projections of numbers of people in each of the skilled trades that will be needed. That being so, can you comment on the numbers needed for various trades? Like a wild guess, but I'm sure that's an informed wild guess. So John, over to you on that one.
So right now, great question, Mr. Severnhaus. We are in the process of identifying those exact local scopes of work here in the first quarter of 2022. And once we have those identified that will be done locally, then we'll be able to also say, here are the jobs or roles needed for that. Certainly the majority of the jobs, 2/3 of them will be skilled trades. You know, you'll see a lot of focus on electricians, mechanics, welders, individuals to be able to do coatings. You'll need IT technicians, you know, just to name a few straight off the bat. But around the end of first quarter, beginning of second quarter this year, we should have a much better appreciation for at least a little bit more on numbers for the different types of skilled categories that will be expected.
Okay, and Dr. Brannon, over to you on this one, because so John showed a chart earlier that showed how the employment opportunities are going to ramp up over the next 2 or 3 years. But now is the critical period for the educators to do their thing, right? And the workforce development people to do their thing. So can you just comment on that a little bit? How you're going to ramp up for the production and installation, and then how you're going to maintain for the future of maintenance, basically, and life cycle support.
And thank you. And I think it's also important to remember that there's not only the needs for offshore wind, and Bob, you mentioned this earlier, we've got the bridge and tunnel expansion in our backyard. We've got the shipyard preparing for the Columbia-class submarine. We've got the expansion of I-64 from Rich. I mean, there's a number. And so that number of that, it's a large number. So, and then there's just general maintenance of our community, right? General infrastructure maintenance. So we're going to need large numbers. One of the things I wanted to mention, and I think Tanya Bird put a link in our chat box, which leads to something else. There's a program called the National Energy Education Development. And we have to remember that 6th graders will be graduating from high school in 6 years. And so when it comes to developing that talent pipeline, we have to be working on not only preparing a current workforce and attracting a current workforce. That's the short-term goal. But long-term, we have to be partnering with our K through 12 sisters in this area. And so we have great relationships at the community college level with our dual enrollment programs. Here at Thomas Nelson, the academies of Hampton, where we give students associate degrees before they get high school diplomas, and they're able to get other short-term certifications, but preparing 6th graders right now, right? And that's the work in the K through 12 space. There's tons of science programs that are out there and specialized programs at our high schools that are really helping introduce and attract students to this work. And then our role is to make sure we're connecting with those K through 12 partners. And so while I believe, Bob, that we have the population here and now to prepare for longevity, we have to make sure that we're introducing our youngest citizens to these careers when they're in the 6th grade and really going to start making decisions about where they're going to go. And so by the time they get to high school, it's way too late, right? It's way too late for us to be talking to 11th and 12th graders. You develop that palate and that taste and that desire and confidence for this type of work. Especially for those advanced positions that John was talking about. Like, you'll need skilled trade labor, but you're also going to need engineers and computer scientists. You're going to need someone with doctorate degrees as well. And that work has to begin in the K through 12 space. So Bob, I believe when it comes to ramping up, it's not just what we can do here in higher education, but also how we're creating pathways to expose and to help some of the work that's already being done in the K through 12 space to introduce more and more students to alternative energy and engineering and things of that nature.
That's outstanding. Thanks. So you answered about 3 of my questions in your soliloquy there, but so I'm all out of questions. No, I'm just kidding. But so I'm never out of questions. So I will say that about 3 years ago, I heard Jennifer Boykin, who's the president of Newport News Shipbuilding, talking about the future of building carriers. And she was talking about the 2 carrier build that's getting ready to ramp up now. And she said the 2nd carrier is going to be built by kids who are in pre-K right now. So what you're saying about reaching down to middle school even extends further down to pre-K, right? To make sure that we're providing the proper education for the residents of the peninsula to ensure upward mobility and our future economic growth. So I'm glad you touched on that. Okay, so I would like to just do a quick round robin. We're at about 45-minute point, a quick round robin to ask each of you what you think the major challenge is from your perspective in becoming the offshore wind hub for the East Coast. So I'm going to start with Virginia. Virginia, what do you think is the major challenge for Hampton Roads? And if it's something that that stakeholders in Hampton Roads can help with, please let us know that also. So go ahead.
That's a great question. I initially was thinking that, training up significant amount of labor to address all of the new demand would be the most challenging, but I'm not sure I believe that anymore. I do think that we're well equipped and we're ready. And Dr. Porter Brannon has made me more confident than before. I do think that some of the permitting and some of the, I guess you could say, red tape will be kind of difficult to maneuver through. I know that there are some staffing shortages for different agencies that have to sign off on projects. And so I think that will be something that will hold up some of the projects, and we're working hard to make sure that doesn't happen. We don't want any delays, but I do see that. I've heard things from different agencies that they are struggling to get through all of the work that's put on their plate with new infrastructure projects, and specifically the offshore wind expansion. So that's kind of what I would guess is going to provide some barriers to offshore wind developing here. But we'll work to fight that.
Okay, so my follow on there is, so who are the stakeholders in the Hampton Roads region or on the peninsula specifically who can help with that through advocacy or whatever? And could you also talk about a little bit about BOEM, what that stands for, and how they figure in that permitting process?
Yes. So Bureau of Ocean Energy Management is one of the key, I guess you could say, agencies, stakeholders too, that signs off on different offshore wind projects, how they study how it's going to impact maybe some of the fishermen and the economics there. And John can probably speak to the process a little bit better than I, but it's very, very, I guess it's long-term. It takes multiple years. They have to talk to multiple different stakeholders and hear public opinion. And I think someone who can help with, pushing and advocating for improving the permitting process and speeding it up is someone like your Congresswoman. So Congresswoman Luria and your senators. I think, the Congresswoman and Senator Warner and Senator Kane wrote a letter to Bureau of Ocean Energy Management last year asking for them to expedite the review process, the permitting process of Coastal Virginia offshore wind project, because it was seeing so many delays. So local officials, your state officials and federal officials, I think are key stakeholders. I think, the Peninsula Chamber, if you all are advocating, we're seeing these delays and that's impacting these businesses and this industry, sharing that with your federal representatives is key, I think.
Absolutely. So the B in BOEM stands for Bureau, and that's like a bad word sometimes, right? But just to let everybody know, people who work at the Bureau are nice people too. So yes. we just need to advocate with them to help get through some of these obstacles. So okay, so John, you want to add to that, or do you want to share a different challenge that you think is going to impact our ability to become the hub?
So I'll quickly say that we've been very pleased with the commitment for additional resources and scheduling at BOEM. And it's an agency that's moving from really primarily working on offshore oil and gas to offshore wind, two different beasts. But it's been very collaborative, and that's been one of the good processes of that pilot project, frankly, for both BOEM and for other developers, including Dominion Energy, is being able to share that experience. I think a couple of items I would really highlight, Bob, that I see as keen opportunities in making sure that we're prepared to grow offshore wind even beyond the CVOW project here, is establishing that domestic supply chain. We all know that today, even still, a large part of the $7 billion of procurement that we've just announced will come from Europe. So great things like seeing the staging and assembly and the blade finishing facility, but what about other parts, tower manufacturers, foundation manufacturers, individuals to do control systems and whatnot for turbines, and just that technology. So that's a key aspect if you think about it from a couple of things. Number one is anytime that you're sourcing goods from overseas, you can have currency risk. We know you can get supply chain impacts on a regional basis, as well as just the transportation coming across the Atlantic. So if we can get that domestically built here, that helps not only us, but the entire industry with mitigating those types of risks, commodity risk, currency risk, and supply chain risk as we go across the board. So that's one area I would like to see Hampton Roads, groups such as yourself, VEDP, and even national support as we go forward to encourage those investments to be made here and continue to grow and go forward, such as the money that Virginia mentioned that came to support the PMT upgrades to $20 million. So we need all of that to happen to be successful.
Okay, thank you, John. Good answer. Also, Dr. Brannon, did they already steal all your thunder, or do you have something to add?
One of the things that I would share in the scope of education, and there was a great question posed in the chat box. I think this addresses when we talk about exposure, like especially exposure for our students. One of the challenges that we have in higher education is the influencers in our students' lives, right? So guidance counselors, teachers, and parents. And I remember, Bob, I was, don't do any quick math, but in 1992, I was a high school senior and I was an honors student, and I was specifically told what type of work I should not be pursuing. Specifically, I was too smart for certain types of work and it'd be a waste of my life if I pursued that. And I promise you in 2022, a number of decades later, some people are still believe that and are still sharing that, right, with the young people who we're trying to get interested and to get them salivating about these types of careers. And I do believe that in addition to exposure and education about this type of work and this career for our young people, we have to make sure that the folks who influence their lives, right, their teachers, their guidance counselors, career coaches, and parents and friends, that they understand the power of this industry, right, how it could help move you into different social economic statuses, and just how great the work really is and the value of this work. And I think that if we want to become a hub, it's going to be a big challenge if the majority of our folks who influence our future workforce still think that this type of work is, right, like your grandfather's manufacturing work. And I think that there's a lot we have to do intentionally to make sure that we introduce and reintroduce the value of this work and how it's really, not only is it valuable financially, but how, there's a pathway, right? There's growth opportunities, and anyone can do this work with the right education and training and timing. And I do believe that it's a threat to us being a successful hub if we haven't positioned in the minds and hearts of those who influence the future work talent that this is incredible work that we would get to do for this region.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much for that. And I'm singing the same song. So we need to get out and tour together. That was great. Thank you. So I have a quick couple of public service announcements from our chat box. So my friend Sharnya Smith from the Academies of Hampton would like everybody to know, in case they're not monitoring the chat box, that the Academies of Hampton will host a hiring event for seniors on March 8th at the Hampton Roads Convention Center. So please put that down on your schedule. And Tanya Bird from Dominion would like everyone to know that if you have interest in having Dominion Energy speak with high school students or probably other organizations, if I'm not wrong, Tanya, about opportunities, please take her information. Her information is in the chat box, but it's Tanya, TONYA.BYRD@dominionenergy.com. All right. And I think I covered the chat box. Oh, and somebody said go Crabbers. But that's my line. Okay, so closing remarks. Is there anything, Virginia, that you would like to say that we haven't covered already?
I don't think so. I do appreciate that you all are talking about this and the work that you all are doing to prepare the region and to prepare the next generation to meet the needs that offshore wind industry will bring. And we're here to advocate for this as well. You'll see the Congresswoman, she's very vocal about her support for offshore wind and how we can get a skilled workforce ready in Hampton Roads to address those needs. So we're really excited. Thank you for having me. And please reach out if you have any requests or questions.
Thanks, Virginia. And John?
I would just say that for the Hampton Roads area in particular, just that awareness for individuals that may want to step into the energy industry or clean energy careers, and businesses that have opportunities to engage. This is one of the most transformational eras since initially wires were strung to people's houses, these changes that we're making. And it's a great opportunity. So just sharing, following and tracking what's going on, and helping to promote the awareness and generate interest so that Dr. Porter Brannon and companies like Dominion, as we look to hire people and they look for students, can get people to engage and step into it. So, that's the biggest opportunity I see.
All right, thank you, John. And Porter.
If I could close, this is an incredible opportunity for everyone in our region when it comes to workforce and social economic mobility, and just being the hub. I'm very competitive, so just like being number one is something I always ascribe to, and I think that we are uniquely positioned to do this better than any other area in our country. And I'm just really excited about not only the opportunities it has for the region to position itself, but also the benefits that are going to come to the businesses and the residents that in our area. So it's really exciting, an exciting time for us and for our pre-K students and everyone else. It's an exciting time, and I'm excited to be part of it.
Thank you, Porter. Thank you to our distinguished panelists. That was a great conversation. I think you answered everybody's questions because we don't have any more questions in the Q&A box. So I'm going to wrap it up so we can be finished at 1. So I'm often, when I'm talking to people about economic growth on the Virginia Peninsula and the Hampton Roads area, I always express my surprise that we are not booming and much stronger economically than any area in the country because we have so many great assets here. But I'm really excited for the future for many, many reasons, and they're overlapping to a large extent. So offshore wind power, which is obviously the subject of today's conversation, but you heard talk about transportation, about the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel. We have 205 miles of 664 that have been either improved or are in the process of being improved right now. We have the largest industrial employer in the state of Virginia and the only place in the world that builds nuclear carriers and submarines. So we have so many great gifts, but then some of the things we didn't talk about are fiber broadband, from Cox and others, the ring that's being built on the south side, the transatlantic cables that are coming ashore in Virginia Beach. I mean, these are all great things that bring great opportunities to our area. Jefferson Lab, NASA, the science and technology industry here in Hampton Roads is incredible and such a fantastic asset that we really should have no problem attracting and retaining good talent, because that's the name of the game. If we can attract and retain talent, whether it be from universities through K through 12 school systems here, or from our transitioning service members, we will boom economically and we will be a powerhouse in the United States, as we should be. So I appreciate our audience for joining us today for this conversation. We're going to do these every month. We've been doing them every month for the last 18. We're going to continue to do them. We're going to continue to do them virtually so you can dial in from your desk while you're eating that healthy lunch. So please join us next month. Stay tuned for future events and bring a friend next month and tell them you can dial in from your phone or you can dial in from your desktop. So we will keep this series going and we will keep these great conversations going. And the next time I'm going to have a professional moderator to moderate the panel. So that's all I've got for today. Thanks for being with us. Give me a call. I always like to hear from you, and let's get coffee. Thank you.